These two boxes of Rallyman are jam-packed with possibilities, and it's my intention to highlight all of the interesting things you can do with them. This is Shakedown. In today's Shakedown, we're going to use some new and improved NPC Driver Cards to go back in time to the early years of the WRC. Switzerland has never featured in the World Rally Championship, but the Lancia Stratos sure has, and in the capable hands of Il Drago, Sandro Minari, it dominated the first few years of the WRC. But because the championship's original focus was on the manufacturers rather than the drivers, you might not know that Minari was even a star driver at all, or what his skills as a driver were. I know I didn't, so I set about changing that. Previously, I looked into using the NPC driver traits to showcase a driver during a particular period in their career. And while this is certainly one way to give an NPC some more character, it's perhaps not the best way. Inspired by the unlimited dashboards that unlock more slots for you to make use of depending on which surface you're driving on, I went back to the drawing board and came up with a driver card that gets more difficult the more you see of it. Today we'll be driving the green R4, the Stratos itself, and we'll be using Sandro Minari's driver card in its most basic form. Put the card behind a dashboard so that the top and bottom are visible, and just like that, you can pretend to be the dragon himself. You don't even need the NPC rules to make use of a driver card like this. But slide the card up a little to reveal the driver's easy difficulty, as shown by Jean-Pierre Nicolas here, and you'll have the suggested rerolls and driver trait for an easy NPC. He'll be driving the blue R4, the same Alpine that he and his teammates won the first WRC season with. Slide the card up further and the NPC now has two visible driver traits, both of which are in effect. Ari Vartman will have the flat-out trait no matter what difficulty you decide to face him, and at his medium difficulty he's a specialist when it comes to drifting and sliding around a stage. Ari is in the purple R4, the Mark II Escort that he was in for a long time, including when he won the WRC in 1981. Finally, if you reveal all the contents of a driver card, you have an NPC at their hardest difficulty. The formidable Marku Allen may not have been crowned WRC champion, but he came closer than you'd think, and with all of these traits and the best set of rerolls to work with, he's going to be quite a challenge. He's in the red R4, the Fiat 131, with which he won the WRC in 1978, but as there wasn't a drivers' championship until 1979, he only won a cup for his efforts. You may be wondering why each driver has a different colour behind their portrait, and that is to show how difficult they are to race against in the grand scheme of things. Anyone with a green background ought to be easier to face even when they're at their most difficult. Likewise, an NPC with a red background can be tricky even at their easiest difficulty. This isn't always the case, but is an indicator that you can use at a glance to decide who to pick as your opponents. Minari's yellow background means that he is about on par with Vartman when it comes to difficulty, were we to be playing against him as ourselves. But just like real-world rallying, there will be occasions where the driver traits will allow someone to shine, and occasions where they'll do nothing useful at all. There's no point in being an asphalt specialist on a stage with no asphalt, is there? To keep things nice and simple today, I'm going to run the relatively easy Jean-Pierre Nicolas at his easiest difficulty, the relatively difficult Marku Allen at his hardest difficulty, and the middly Ari Vatanen right in the middle at his medium difficulty. We're just going to run a single stage today to see how these NPCs will work. It's got a mix of track features to show off the driver traits, and I hope the randomised starting order will mean that we don't have to go first and sweep the stage for our opponents. Let's find out. We don't have to sweep the stage, but we do have to watch everybody else in front of us dirty it up. We are in fourth in this race. Taking things away first is Marku Allen, so he will be on the gravel leader dice. He is about as difficult as you can get, which means he is re-rolling that die and that die. He gets rid of two hazards. So what can he do? He can go as far as he likes with what he's got. 1, 2, 3, coast, and then into fourth, ready to break on the next turn. He will get 2 seconds back for unused dice, and his maximum attack trait gives him an extra -1 second each turn. His next turn then is just as good. he has one hazard. However, he is a gravel specialist, so he can ignore that coast hazard when he's on gravel. And this entire course is gravel, so he is effectively going to turn that into a blank die. We'll probably use it there after we have breakdown to second gear. And then we can coast through. And do we want to finish on the corner or before it? I think on the corner is fine. So he's going to get 1 second for unused dice and another second for maximum attack. And he's going to finish there in fourth gear. Behind him, Jean-Pierre Nicolas, and he is at the easiest difficulty. So he's re-rolling lots of dice that don't show hazards. In fact, most of his dice pool. So he only picks up the 1, which is good for him. He will take the same line and get 2 seconds back off of his final stage time. Back to Marku, and he is re-rolling these hazards and gets rid of both of them. That's what the hard NPCs do. He is, I think, going to break down to second and coast as far through as he can and emerge up in fourth gear before a gear 1, gear 2 corner. But of course, there is a shortcut on it. What can Jean-Pierre do to catch up? He was very close to losing control. He's going to re-roll all of his blank dice. Doesn't get any extra hazards, but that will be a bit of a problem for him. So he has a hazard on the 2, breaking down to the 2. He's going to have to place another hazard on the next corner, and so he will only be able to get out in third gear. Better than a crash at least. On the start line behind him is Ari Vatanen, and Ari's flat out trait means that there is a different check for the loss of control. He has not lost control on this occasion. He's going to re-roll the highest gear die with a hazard and 1 blank coast die. Gets rid of a hazard. So he is going to do much the same as everybody else. He is going to come through the corner and emerge in fourth gear. What can Marku do through the shortcut? He's going to re-roll these dice and gets rid of a hazard or 2. Right, he can, I think, break down to second gear to go through the shortcut. He doesn't have any traits that will allow him to get rid of that hazard, so that is doubled. He is at 2 of 3. However, his gravel specialist trait allows him to turn a hazard on a coast die into a blank die, so he will make use of that, going through the next few spaces up to gear 3 and out in gear 4. What can Jean-Pierre do? He gets to re-roll 2 blank dice and the highest 4 gear die that do not show hazards. He only gets 1 extra hazard, however. So he's in third gear. He doesn't want to break down to first. That would be a couple of hazards. So he is instead going to drop to second to go as far down the stage as he can for emerging in fourth gear. Ari Vatanen is not going to lose control. He's going to re-roll no coast die and the highest gear die with a hazard, which is nothing. So he's got the same dice he's rolled to work with. Breakdown to second is 1 hazard. He can ignore a hazard on a coast die if he drifts or slides. So does he want to make use of that at any point? I think if he goes 3, 4 and then into a drift, he will ignore that. It doesn't need to, of course. He's not at his hazard limit, but that will put him there in fourth gear. And finally, it is our turn. And I think I'm going to learn from all of these guys ahead. And I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, flat out. Hope to generate some seconds. Of course, I can make use of them while the other drivers can't. That is 5 focus coming our way. We are in 4th gear, much like everybody else. Marku Allen is up next. He gets to re-roll his gear 4. We would all like to go over the jump, but none of us are in cars that are fast enough to get up to 5th gear, so we are going to have to wait for the next jump around the corner. In that case, Marku is going to break down to 2nd, coast on through as quickly as he can, and he will end in the inside in 4th gear. Jean-Pierre Nicolas behind him is re-rolling that die and all of these dice. Picks up a couple of hazards. So he's in 4th gear. Let's see, perfect pace notes. He can go through the shortcut without doubling a hazard. So I think we can do that. He can end his turn in 4th gear. He can't really do anything else unless he wants to end in a lower gear. He has dirtied up the corner for those that follow, and that includes us. Ari Vartnen is up next. He does not lose control. He's going to re-roll that die. Doesn't change his fortunes. So he's in 4th gear. He could break down to 2nd. Let's see how far up he can get. He can do something like this. So yes, he will be breaking down to 2nd. That's 1 hazard. He will end there in 4th gear. What can we do next? We are going to do much the same. 3, 4 like that, and then not roll those. Do I want to go flat out on those? Bit of a risk, but I am going to take it and get 2 hazards. Not enough to lose control, but for a 2nd time in a row, I was very close. Next round, and Marku Allen gets to re-roll a couple of hazards and potentially take a jump. He wants to be somewhere over here in 4th, which would put him there. He is currently in 4th gear, so he can stay in 4th like that. Jean-Pierre is next. He has slowed down a little. He's going to re-roll these 2 and these 2 and get some hazards. He, I don't think, wants to break down to 2nd. So he's going to go 3rd, 4th. He doesn't have anything that will raise hazards for him, so he's going to place his 2nd hazard there. So he is stuck there in 4th gear. Ari Vartnen is going to see if he loses control, which he doesn't. He's going to re-roll nothing, but he does have a shortcut to go through. So he's going to go through in 2nd, because that will allow him to get up through the gears and try to overtake Jean-Pierre. We would like to do so as well. We're going to have to get there first, and that means something like that. And I think that that is a risk too far for flat out. So I'm going to roll these 1 by 1, pick up 1 hazard on a coast die, and a 2nd hazard on gear 3. So I will pay 1 second to secure 4th gear. Marku Allen into the back half of the stage. He has no hazards to work around. He is going to, I think, break into 2nd gear and coast out as far as he can. And that will put him through that corner in 3rd and out in 4th gear with enough room to break down for the next corner. Next up is Ari Vartnen, who has managed to overtake JP, and he doesn't need to avoid the hazards, so he can break down to 2nd gear and then coast all the way through and emerge in 4th gear in that space. So what can Jean-Pierre do? He is going to re-roll these 2 and these two and not pick up any extra hazards. He is going to only get up here in fourth and there in third, and I think he will have to use his coast die for the rest of the spaces and end his turn in fourth gear. We are next and we have to go through the shortcut. We are going to drop down to second gear to do that and do much the same as everybody else to try and get up through the gears. Again, I don't want to roll those flat out. I see that Marku Allen is picking up a lot of focus, so I will at some point have to try and generate some more. But I think in the safer areas will be better. So, do I want to pay another 2 focus to secure those dice? I am going to risk the 3, which is good, and I'm going to chicken out on the 4. It's another second spent in order to secure fourth gear. I am closing in on the cars ahead of me, however, as we go into the next round and see what Marku can do. He gets to re-roll these dice, and his gravel specialist means that he can get rid of the hazard on that die. So probably wants to go around the outside in second. So he is going to put this coast die with a hazard on gravel. That means that he can ignore it. He's going to break down to second gear. That is his one and only hazard for the turn then. Coast out. Coast out. And I think he'll have to go around the outside to finish in fourth gear. Ari Vartanen is just ahead of JP, and he is going to re-roll this die, gets rid of a hazard, and he also has a hazard on a coast die that he can ignore if he drifts or slides. So we'll see if that comes into play. Does he want to go over the jump in fourth? Let's see, can he get there? I believe he can. If he breaks down to second, third, he can coast in third. He can go into the jump in fourth gear to put him there. He can then come into a drift around the outside, and he can turn that hazard into a blank die using his drifting specialist trait. It was not necessary for the hazard limit on his turn, but it does look cool. What can Jean-Pierre do to catch up? He is going to re-roll those 3 gears and these dice and escape extra hazards. He's in fourth gear. He probably wants to get the distance, so he wants to break down to second. Can he get over the jump? Probably. He can, let's see, do something like that. I'll put him in the jump there, and he will have to go into a drift to follow Ari. And these two are side by side coming through the final half of the course. We are in fourth gear, and I'm going to play things safe on this turn. I'm just going to go 3, coast, 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 4. Hopefully those will be good dice and get me some focus back. It won't get me far down the track, but it will get me something. 2 hazards, very close to losing control. I get my 5 focus. Hopefully I can keep them going forward so that I can catch up with Marku. Speaking of Marku, what is he going to do this turn? He doesn't need to re-roll anything, and he has a gear 1 corner to slow down for. He can end his turn in fourth gear if he's smart, but given that I am controlling him, he might do something a bit different. Let's see, he can go into third, break down to first, coast on through, and come out the other side in second gear. So he can tackle that entire double hairpin tile and emerge 40 seconds later out the other side. Ari Vartanen is not losing control. He gets to re-roll 1 hazard, but doesn't get rid of it. He is currently drifting, however, so he can at least turn that hazard into a blank die. I don't think he needed it in the end, although given that he has a hazard on his brake, he probably did. So he's going to do something like this. Probably wants to take the inside lane, just in case JP behind him has any ideas. What can Jean-Pierre do? He is going to be close to losing control. And given his rerolls, he doesn't have a lot to work with. Does he want to drop down to second gear? Yes, he does. He can get up to fourth gear. It will be in a space behind Ari once again. No opportunity to overtake, but he does get a second back for unused dice. Once again, I want to keep things as simple as I can. And I'm going to go over the jump in fourth, puts me there. I want to go flat out on these. I definitely don't want to lose control. Just the one hazard, and that gets us over the jump and into that space in fourth gear. Can Marku finish on this turn? I believe he can. He gets to re-roll one of these coast die. That won't affect him, I don't think. He is going to want to end in fourth gear. He's in second, so he doesn't have to brake. Let's just put out fourth gear there, third gear there, coast there. He is a gravel specialist, so you can get rid of a hazard on the gravel and then go up through the gears like that. That'll be a fourth gear finish. Ari is going to lose control. Normally, you check for gears 2, 3, and 4. If there are 3 hazards, then you lose control. But with the flat out trait, you also check for first gear. And if there are 3 hazards anywhere during those 4 dice, then Ari loses control. He does get to reroll this for his dice placement, however. So he's going to have no knowledge that he is losing control. He's going to be in second gear there. He can get rid of that hazard by drifting. And then he's going to go into the next corner in third. He can come out in third. He can go up to fourth gear in that space there, at which point he loses control. Ari is unlucky once again, but this time it is all his fault. JP has a chance to overtake then, and he is going to re-roll lots of dice as the easy driver that he is. Picks up a couple more hazards. So he's in fourth gear. He can break down to second, and he can coast around the outside. He can't make use of his trait at any point coming up, so he is going to go into third there and into fourth in the drifting space. Now we're in fourth, and I think I need to make up some distance. So I'm going to go through the next couple of corners like that. I am absolutely not going to roll those flat out, much as I'd like. And it's at this point that all of these dice will be blank, as they tend to do when I decide things. One hazard on the 4, could have gone flat out. Alas, that is Rallyman. Next up is Ari Vartanen rejoining the track. Ari does not have access to one of his coast dice. He doesn't lose control on this occasion. Nothing to re-roll. So he's going to go into first gear there. He's going to coast through and emerge in a drift over there. And a gear 2 finish is not what he wanted. Jean-Pierre behind him is going to re-roll lots of dice. Picks up an extra hazard. He's going to want to slow down for the upcoming set of hairpins. He can therefore go 4-3 coast coast. Can't break down to first gear, so he will stay in second around the outside. What can we do behind them? We're going to have to go around the outside like everyone else, and we can get up to fourth gear if we manage to roll that far. So one by one again, although I was lucky last time. Let's see if we're lucky this time. Yes, we are. Just the one hazard on the brake. And now I feel more confident about chasing Markku Allen down. Ari Vatanen loses one of his coast die, and he is going to re-roll the highest gear die. Gets rid of a hazard. He's in second gear. He could drop to first. He can get rid of this hazard on the drifting space, and then he can go up through the gears as fast as he can in order to get there in fourth gear. JP behind him is going to roll all of his dice. He's going to re-roll a great many of them and pick up lots of hazards. So he's going to have a bit of a tricky turn on this occasion. He's going to drop to first in order to coast through the inside, but then he will only be able to emerge in third gear. I think fourth place is very much his. It'd be nice if we could do what Markku did and get all the way around the corner. I'm going to put that in backwards in order to see if I can do it. 4-3 break 1. Yes, so I'm going to be rolling those one by one and hopefully not have to pay a lot of focus for these dice. Hazard on the 4 and hazard on the 1 says otherwise. So I'm going to be risking this coast, and that was a risk too far. Funnily enough, that is the corner that kept giving me problems in Rally Trophy. So I clearly haven't learned my lesson as we go into the next round and see what Ari Vatanen can do. He is going to roll all of these dice and re-roll that one. And he only needs to use gear 3 and gear 4 to get him over the line in fourth gear. And then JP behind him is going to roll all of these dice and come close to losing control. He's going to have those dice to play with. He's in third gear, so he's going to come up to fourth gear and cross the line. And then it is our turn as we turn back around in gear 0. I'm going to go into first gear. I'm going to coast as far as I can. 2, 3, 4 puts me one space short of what I need. At this point, I think the win goes to Markku, so we are fighting Ari Vatanen. Do we want to go one by one? I think, to be sure, we probably do. So the 1 is good, the coast is good, as is the next 2. The 2 shows a hazard, 3 is good, the 4 is good. And we're going to go flat out with the coast die across the line. Not the best of finishes for us. Let's see what it has done to our time and see who has won this Switzerland stage. In the end, it was no contest as far as Markku Allen was concerned, as he wins in 3 minutes and 18 seconds. I did manage to keep hold of second place after my spin, finishing in 3 minutes 55. Ari Vatanen's trouble coming into the double hairpin cost him finishing in an unexpected fourth place in 4 minutes 47, as Jean-Pierre Nicolas takes third place in 4 minutes and 38. And that time has been adjusted according to how he should have finished his penultimate turn, proving that a crash in rallying is always worse than it looks. So we've seen all the driver traits in action, though they could certainly be more useful to each driver under different circumstances, especially if they were in cars that could take more jumps, or there were more shortcuts to make use of, for example. If you want to make use of these driver cards, you can head over to BoardGameGeek right now and download a file with 80 driver cards for use in rallying and rallycross. And if you want to make your own, there are templates available too. More info on those in the video description. As the cards are based on Dr. Worm's NPCs, and those NPCs are designed to work with all kinds of Rallyman content, there is no reason why there can't be driver cards for Formula 1, or DTM, or the British Touring Car Championship, or any other motorsport you care to make Rallyman NPCs for. It's a great way to learn about some of the icons of the sport, as well as their lesser known stars, and it's a great way to get better at playing Rallyman. Now, if Marku would just spill some of his secrets, I'd be all set for success.